no one can succeed in this industry without some kind of advice, whether it's coming from tutorials or lots and lots of practice on their own or studying from life. But it's a very dedicated thing that you have to do.
So one of my lines, it's like I say the same 5 lines over and over again. And one of the lines is, if somebody tries to tell you that their way is the only right way to do something, run.
But I also do feel that knowing that it's something that you want to do, even when it's unrewarding, is really important.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of the Industry Standards Podcast. Today, we are going to delve into the world of VFX and After Effects, something that we haven't done before. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the podcast. So the Industry Standard Podcast was started with the goal to bring the best and brightest minds in VFX, animation, games, VR, you name it, into a platform where they can share the tips and tricks, their histories, as a way to inspire and help guide the following generations of artists. So I hope you guys enjoy these segments. Make sure to follow, subscribe, like, share this podcast because we are just starting out and every bit helps. Thanks to today's sponsor, the Ringling College of Art and Design's Virtual Reality Department. You'll hear more from them at some point in this podcast. My name's Ana Carolina Pereira, and I'm your host for today. I am a 3D technical and character artist. Those are separate. And I work at the Ringling College of Art and Design, and I'm very excited to be with Daniel Hashimoto today, aka Hashi. Let me introduce you a little bit, and then you can tell us all about your background and all of the wonderful projects you've worked on before. So, Hashi is a internet famous VFX artist. I think you are very famous. I don't know, like, is that how people introduce you normally? He has a series called ActionMovieKids. In fact, his Twitter handle is ActionMovieDad, which I think is so funny and cute. And he puts these kids into VFX movies, things like at home on the playground, and they'll be like doing crazy lightsaber battles and crazy action shots. And he also does a series called But with Raptors, in which they take old movie footage and replace it with Raptors, which is obviously like, normal. I do that every day too, I love those videos, FYI. And VFX and Chill, a series in which they do a lot of the behind the scenes, work when it comes to VFX. To top it all off, he started off from a humble background of getting started at DreamWorks as lead of the After Effects team. Hashi, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Anna. It's wonderful to be here. And this all sounds really exciting. What do you want to know? I would love to share some of my internet fame with your listeners.
There will be questions about that because one of the things that interests me the most personally, as far as like general, I'm writing a book on this. It's like how to stand out in our respective industries, and a lot of people just think that hard work is enough. And I'm here to tell them that like everybody who makes it and works hard, but there's ways to stand out via social media, making foot content and whatnot. So that's actually really interesting for me personally. I hope our listeners like it too. Maybe.
Oh, excellent.
So let's start with your background. What made you want to get into the VFX field?
This is the same story as nearly every visual effects artist that I know. I was young when things like the Star Wars movies came out and the Indiana Jones movies came out, and all of the Spielberg and Lucas films were played constantly on a loop in my house, and I loved them. I think what made me want to get into the industry was when I finally started seeing things like From Star Wars to Jedi, which is a great little behind-the-scenes documentary made about the Star Wars films, and a great stunts of Indiana Jones VHS tape that I had that I would watch on loop, because it was just amazing to me that one of the occupations you could have was being one of the people who put these crazy pieces of entertainment together. And so because of starting out with these very high concept blockbusters as inspiration, those were the types of films or effects I always wanted to bring to life. They were what I played. And as early as I was able to, I would use our family's home video camera to start making videos subjecting, my siblings to action sequences and chases and stunts that they were probably definitely qualified for. And it sort of went from there. I continued into high school making goofy films with a bunch of my friends. And it was at about the same time that After Effects was becoming more accessible to someone working on a home computer. And so we would do parodies of movies and add visual effects to them and lightsabers or laser blasts and explosions. And I had no idea that, 20 something years later, I would be doing the exact same thing.
That is actually wonderful. So in a way, nothing's changed because now you still subject your family to making movies.
That's precisely correct. So yeah, if you enter my sphere, I will subject you to visual effect shots. It's just what happens.
That is like super funny. I love that. You were smarter than me because I was enjoying that same content. And I never stopped to think that somebody made the VFX and somebody made the 3D models. Like for some reason, it just never clicked to me. I never saw that as an option until I accidentally stumbled into it when I was like 19 years old again.
Oh my goodness!
Isn't that crazy?
Well, it's fun. It's fun. It's interesting what different people focus on their creative journey. So that's cool. I mean, that's a really cool time for that fascination to hit too, I'd imagine. So.
It was wonderful. So what would you say was the transition from being a hobbyist to being a professional? When did that take place and how was that like?
Well, I went to, I did end up going to film school, which was lovely. And it'll be hard to do a lot of this without just acknowledging that I was very privileged growing up. My parents were doctors. My mom eventually stopped being a doctor and became a kindergarten teacher and then a child psychology specialist, which was amazing. And during that time, I was very creative and not very much going to follow in what my family had been doing for generations, which were doctors and professors on both sides. And so I really wanted to creatively express myself. And my parents were tremendous about enabling me to do that. So that led to film school, and that led to the first time that I was, quote, living on my own and realized that I could maybe earn money doing something that I liked via this wonderful classmate who was working at a post-production house and saw that I was putting a lot of After Effects work into my short films there and said like, hey, if you ever want to do some like titles or something like that, I can get you paid for like History Channel work or something like that. And so as the side project, every time I would see this classmate in school, I would get some little assignment for a show on Bravo or the History Channel or A&E. And so I would take that home and do that with my homework, and he would bring me money for it, which is really cool. And so just by word of mouth, that drew me into this sort of the world of like post-production, doing titles and graphics for things. And as soon as I finished college, I still really wanted to pursue movies. And so I had applied something like every summer that I was there, tried applying to the animation studios and the movie studios, and never managed to score an internship during my time there, which I found very disappointing. But then upon graduation, I was lucky enough to get a call from DreamWorks Animation, who had me come in and interviewed me in 5 different departments. And the one that I gelled with the most was the story and editorial department. And so I got my start by getting hired to be the production assistant on How to Train Your Dragon when it was just starting out.
That is fascinating. Just like every other guest I've ever had, which is not a lot to be fair, but it's always networking or word of mouth that kind of slides that door open ever so slightly, that helps people walk through to get that first opportunity, which just kind of highlights the importance of that.
Certainly. And I never think of it as, networking in the making sure that you're meeting the right people and going way out of your way. I've just found that, and granted, this is very lucky that I was in the right pool of people at the time, but if you do the type of work that is notable to somebody and or notable enough for them to mention to anybody else, that is really, really wonderful. And it's a really good thing to do, because nearly every paying gig that I had was someone who knew someone who knew someone that guy does After Effects stuff, and it's sort of neat. So that's what was really lucky for me, was having a slightly unique niche skill, which was using After Effects to do visual effects work. And it works wonderfully for that, but there aren't a lot of people who still embrace it that way.
Oh, that's super interesting. I thought a lot of people did embrace it. So what would you say is the mainstream way to do that?
I do know that a lot of studios like to use Nuke in their pipeline instead of something like After Effects. And After Effects is an older build in general. It feels like an older mentality of compositing. But what I like about it is that it's such a workhorse of a program. It gets down to the very, very fundamentals, where you can do anything from scratch to building your own effect to coming up with a final product. And I think that process is really what I like almost more than any other part of it, is just knowing that this program has kind of welded to my brain in the way that I imagine and construct things. And so because of that, I've become very proficient in it over the years, and I like to try to push the limits of what it does. And that's how what I get jazzed about in the morning is what I can accomplish in After Effects that day.
That's super cool. That, like, I would never have thought of After Effects to do VFX. Well, mostly because I never think about After Effects. I'm so removed from this world. I'm from the world of games and VR, and I actually never opened my eyes too much to motion design or anything like that in VFX until I went to NAB last year, which was where we met. Which was fun.
Yeah, which is not to sell yourself as an incredible artist, short, because that's a very different approach. Like it's a really specific and like honed skill in arena. So it is the same thing as far as I'd say.
So I was going to ask you, like, just because of my own ignorance towards your field, like, can you tell me a little bit about like VFX, what that's like? Yeah, is the industry, is it thriving? Like, what's the situation?
Well, there are, the visual effects industry has a lot of interesting stuff going on with it in general. So I'll say, first of all, what's really neat to me in just the geek sense is that visual effects are becoming so accessible to many people. I mean, even After Effects as a way to composite multiple layers of digital video together was groundbreaking for me. It was just so neat that I could film two separate things and put them together and tape them together with electricity or explosions or any other things that you could put together and layer things up the way you can in Photoshop. That was just so fascinating to me, and I love doing it. And nowadays, visual effects are, in terms of the technology, are really thriving. There are so many huge leaps in technology that are being made all the time. There are traditional digital effects like Avatar that are coming out, where it's the height of what you can simulate and how you can composite that kind of stuff. And on the other side, you have machine learning techniques, which are at a very, very scarily accelerated pace, being able to create imagery that used to be very, very difficult to do. And so in terms of technology, visual effects is very exciting. There are so many different ways to represent people's inner worlds as something that you can see and experience on screen. The visual effects industry as a whole is very difficult because one of the downfalls of those types of effects being so accessible is that there are many, many jobs that you can get in the visual effects industry. You've seen Marvel movies, you could build entire buildings out of the walls of people who do the visual effects at the end of those movies. And those are just the ones whose studios were willing to fight for their names to be on screen and mentioned. And so anytime you see just the studio listed, that's fantastic, but also it still represents dozens, if not hundreds of other people who worked on those movies, because a visual effect can take many, many people to put together. And so right now, the difficulty with visual effects is that it is not celebrated yet as an art form among the, let's see, what should I say? Film enthusiasts have a visual effects or digital effects or CGI leave this really bad taste in people's mouths when it comes to publicity and promoting a movie. And instead of acknowledging the wonderful landscape of this art form, we minimize it a lot. It's sort of one of the things where you don't want to ask don't ask about the people who physically built the building, ask about the architect. And so right now, visual effects, because of that, the low visibility of the industry and the workers in it, they are in a lot of difficult financial straits and absurd amounts of pressure. And I think that it's very worth examining as a whole how much we acknowledge that visual effects are a really wonderful and essential part of all movie-going experiences, whether it's a visual effects movie or just a movie that couldn't exist without tons of compositing, whether it has any dinosaurs or explosions in it or not. It's really likely that you had a team of visual effect artists working really hard to make it come together.
That is so true. I remember a story, what you said makes me remember a certain story, and I'm sure you're going to know exactly all about it. A lot of VFX studios will bid out for movies, right? And then end up bankrupting themselves. Such as, I believe the most famous example was the VFX studio that did Life of Pi, who received an Oscar and then shut down like the same week or something like that.
It was very sad. Rhythm and Hughes, who did that. And there is a wonderful documentary on it. I'm forgetting what it is called now. It's not The Life of Pi, but it's a play on the Life of Pi. And we just had it on the show, or we just talked about it the other day, and I'm forgetting about it. There's an online documentary that you can see that spells this out very nicely, all surrounding Rhythm and Hughes and that movie. And it's that same story happens a lot. And the stories that we do hear seem to only come from the people who made enough noise that their story could actually make it through, because in the end, the publicity isn't good for anybody. And so the fact that people have heard that the visual effect industry, works on these razor thin margins and overworked people is very good. It's good to hear things like that. The first time you hear something bad about an industry is at least the first step toward hopefully trying to fix it and embrace it. And so if we move more toward that and less toward visual effects denialism, aka movies like Christopher Nolan movies or the Top Gun movie or something, which are chock full of digital effects, but do their very best in campaigning to not acknowledge that they're using a lot of visual effects, I think the better off we will be.
Is that like a badge of honor? Like, we didn't use CGI?
It seems to be, and it's purely a public perception thing. There's a great little YouTube video by Freddie Wong called Why CGI is Terrible, Except It Isn't. That is a great description of how many things in modern movies are computer generated or computer composited or assisted that people never notice or call out. But it's very likely that the reason people think CGI is bad is because they only notice bad CGI.
So true. Only bad CGI is noticeable. Oh my God, I'm going to write that down. It's weirdly accurate, profound, I agree.
You can watch a whole movie like, like Top Gun, assuming that there were no digital shots in it, and then secretly afterward, during award season or something, they'll say, "Well, we had thousands of shots in it."
Is the VFX industry okay? A lot of our industries are a little toxic when it comes to crunch, overworking, underpaying. Would you say VFX kind of follows in that trend?
Definitely. I think that what it is, but like both visual effects and video games, you're creating this immersive world, and it is very neat that it's generally, you want that world to be the vision of as few people as possible if you want it to be something really astonishing or unique or have a really strong voice. But creating a whole world is a very complicated thing to do, and it requires so much help and so many people. And so what I hope to take away from that is if you've ever enjoyed a game, or you enjoy specific parts of it, or you enjoy a movie that had to have been made with visual effects, if you enjoyed that, appreciate and advocate for the people who likely had to do that. A video game has a really similar pipeline to modern movies like Marvel movies and animated movies, because they both require you to create lots of assets, to have those things rigged, tested, played through, animated, sound design, texture, lighting, technical artists working on it, and a bunch of type of work that I'm not even listening because they might be uninteresting or unsexy to see on screen what they've done, but the game or the movie wouldn't be possible without that technology.
Hey folks, if you're enjoying this podcast episode so far, make sure to drop us a like, follow, and maybe even a review. Share this podcast with your friends and people that might be wanting to come into the industry or already in that might be interested in this content. This will help us grow, and it will greatly support the podcast so that we can keep bringing you this content and even more guests. So, what would you say for people trying to get into the VFX industry? What are the most important skills and qualities for success?
I feel like there are several things. One thing that I love about visual effects, as I had kind of mentioned, is that you can do them at home. You can do them on your computer. You can shoot them with an iPhone or any phone camera. And there's a democratization of that kind of the getting your foot in the door. The next step is having available time to practice. And I think that practicing is something that I know is difficult depending on your circumstances. And so again, I do know that privilege played a lot of that factor into me having lots of free time to try to develop this skill set or whatever. But I also do feel that knowing that it's something that you want to do, even when it's unrewarding, is really important. I think that probably speaks to any person who does something artistic. If it's something that you couldn't not do, then it's probably a good choice for you. So when it comes to special effects or visual effects, rather, I think that one of the ways that there are many ways to get into the industry if you just want to be a worker in the industry, because there are a million jobs on any show. You can laser focus on something like rotoscoping or rig paint out and being really good at repainting images to look like someone wasn't wearing a safety harness or someone wasn't doing something, and coming up with your own techniques for doing it and taking on challenging shots so people will give you more and more challenging shots knowing what you were capable of. The route that I went, and some people are able to do also, is if you see visual effects the way I do, which is I know that the product is a bunch of pixels playing with sound on a screen that someone will see. That's the product I'm interested in. I almost don't care about how I got there, what I needed to beg, borrow, steal, glue together or whatever to make it work. But I've just always been interested in that final image with sound and how it mixed, and trying to make something that was surprising or interesting for people to see, because it was something that when I'm walking around the world, I imagine just the stupidest scenarios. I'm constantly daydreaming and Walter Mittying through boring experiences to make them more interesting to myself. And then when I go home, I try to relive and recreate them visually. And so that's specifically what my process is. But I do think that if you are able to tie some of your voice to your practice that you put into visual effects, you can establish a voice in a way of what types of shots you like to do or what type of visual media you like to produce. Mine is clearly very childlike. I like dinosaurs and explosions, and I like them to be in situations they should not be. And somehow that has become the most successful things I've ever done, is continuing to do this kind of a thing. So I don't know. It's a bizarre calling card, a very mature, seasoned artist's calling card.
You said something that kind of resonated because I have a lot of, experience with mentoring artists. And you said that the results, like the pixels on the screen and the sound, are the most important. And it doesn't matter how you got there. It's so common for me that my students and my mentees, they think that there's a perfect, exact, best way to do everything. And then they will freeze and not do it because they are looking for that best way. When at the end of the day, the real thing is like the final piece is what matters. Absolutely.
I'm sure, that you've talked about this when teaching, but there's no right way to do something. And there's no perfect process. That you will cheat and you will take shortcuts, and you don't need to be ashamed of that being a big part of the process, because if your product speaks for itself, or you can put something out that impresses or makes someone laugh or cry or be scared or think is neat, that's in my opinion, that's the goal, is somebody's reaction to whatever work you're putting out there. And so it's a magic show. It's a fake image on screen. Like, even if your product is a photograph or a video, you are presenting it a really specific way to other people, and if it came out the way you wanted it to in your head, then you're putting forth something that is unique, for the world to see.
Absolutely. Like, we don't necessarily like the Mona Lisa because we know how Da Vinci painted it, right? That's not the point at all of the art form.
What if he used all the wrong brushes? I don't know, man.
What brush is that? That artist line. It's so true. And I try to tell them all the time. And another thing is that you said there's no one right way to do things. And there are people out there that will tell people that there is, right? So one of my lines, it's like I say the same 5 lines over and over again. And one of the lines is, if somebody tries to tell you that their way is the only right way to do something, run out of there.
Agree.
100%. Yeah, it's so true. Because first of all, it's not imaginative, right? It's okay to explore and try new things and push the envelope, so to speak, of what you can do, right?
Absolutely. There's as an artist, there's an interesting balance that you always have to do between. It's always worth acknowledging somebody's experience when they come to explaining why they do something a certain way. But I had heard someone describe a situation which I really like, which is, if you ever run into a situation where you disagree with somebody on how to do something, instead of trying to dig into feeling like you're upset that they're telling you you're doing it the wrong way, just ask them why, and they'll explain why. And now, if you're doing something very technical, like somebody says, don't use that because it will ruin this, you might learn something new from that experience. And it's always worth having heard it. Now you have more information and you can still make up your own mind. And so just in general, if somebody ever says there's only one right way to do this, it's certainly worth asking them, especially if you respect their experience or what they've done in the past or something like that. Ask them why they believe that to be true, and put that in your pocket, because It can be among the many right ways to do something and the million wrong ways to do something. And sometimes the wrong way to do something is what leads you to the coolest product you could have.
Yeah. I was finding that there's a lot of things that we hold to be absolute truths in my side of the industry when it comes especially to character art. When it comes to tech art, I'm not classically trained in any way. I literally taught myself the whole thing, and I'm pretty sure my entire pipeline is that like offshoot from the rest, you know? So I'm not going to talk about that, but in character art, like there's things that were like everything must be this way, but as I look more into it, I find out that actually no, there's more flexibility than you might think. You know?
Certainly. Yeah. And like with character design, there are, I am not at all qualified in this realm, but there are so many ways that character design has evolved over time and been relevant to different cultures and times and places that it's really, really worth noting that like Disney was very, very good at making 2D cute characters that you empathize with immediately for a while, and that's wonderful, and it informed a lot of the way character design and animation went when it came to your main characters and everything like that. But also a movie like District 9 can make you very empathetic for these creatures that are repulsive to look at from a character design perspective, but their situation is very realistic. And so I do know that there's the idea that the more abstract and absurd your character design or your world is, the more grounded and relatable the subject matter needs to be. And I think that that's a more important lesson than to be a good character designer, you need to have studied these 4 people and what these several studios did. I think that it's much more important that you as the designer know what is relatable about your character and what you're relating through the design of them.
That's super true. I had never heard that line before about the more outlandish your character, the more down to earth the story should be. That's super interesting. I'm going to look into that.
I think it makes sense just from if your goal is to be recognized in the mainstream, I should acknowledge that, of course, is that you want empathetic characters that people would like to see. You could also be very edgy and do whatever you want, of course. But if your goal is some kind of commercial success that other people resonate with, it's likely to be found in the commonalities that everybody has.
Ringley Pre-College is seeking visionary VR students with the story and drive to succeed. Do you see yourself creating a three-dimensional, computer-generated virtual reality environment where users can be immersed within your imagined or simulated worlds? Is it games, training, or emotional support? What inspires you to do this work? If this describes you, we want to hear your story. What excites you about these possibilities? Submit your 500-word story in writing or video by March 3rd to mmurphy@c.ringling.edu. 3 selected entries will be awarded $1,000 each towards pre-college 2023 tuition. 1 selected entry will be awarded a full scholarship to pre-college 2023. In accepting the award, you fully agree to enroll in the virtual reality immersion. Visit www.ringling.edu/precollege and click on Connect with Us to book an online info session. And make sure to submit your written or video story as described above. Back to our programming. So, your Action Movie Kids series, speaking of mainstream, right, is super popular. In fact, I have watched, and probably you, the viewer, have seen some of their videos before. I've watched those videos on TikTok before I ever met you, Hashi. Awesome. And I never, put 2 and 2 together. They just come across, they're probably reshared by thousands of accounts and things like that. I even saw that it's been posted onto multiple news outlets and publications as well. Things like VFX artist dad put his kids in outlandish situations, things like that. So first of all, congrats on the success on that. It has millions of views,
thank you very
everywhere.
much.
And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. How did that come to be? I know you said your process is to imagine fun things outside and when you're in the street and bring them home. So tell us a little bit about the concept, the construction of those videos and things like that.
Oh, definitely. Well, yeah, Action Movie Kids, primarily our YouTube channel is sort of the main hub of that. I have been slowly trying to adapt to other social media platforms, but really YouTube is sort of where it all lives. But my wife, Mandy, and I make these videos. Mandy used to work at DreamWorks Animation with me. That is where we met. And we had our first child several years later once we'd done the whole getting married, etc. thing. And while raising our children, there was just a lot of imagination that we liked to keep alive in the house because we love imagining things ourselves. Mandy comes from a physical production background and liked to design rooms and spaces in her house that felt very much like that would reflect whatever our children were into, whether it was it was a cool circus team for a while or a more sci-fi stripey, and just embracing that the children bring this enthusiasm to imaginative play that we had either forgotten about a little bit, or at least it at some point becomes socially awkward to be so playful and shoot laser guns at people throughout the day. But once you have children, suddenly there's this wonderful opportunity you have to relive your past and pass on this torch of, what is a lightsaber? What is all this? And so during all of this adventuring, we would be, I'm a very stereotypical Asian dad with his a video recorder filming everything that my children are doing. And as a very ADHD brained person, I needed something to do at all hours. And one of them was taking these videos and adding visual effects to them. And the main goal of that at first was to post them on Facebook at the time, just to get a laugh out of my friends. Like, oh, look at this dangerous thing that my child is up to. My parents were not on Facebook, and so we started posting them on YouTube because I could just post them on YouTube, copy the link, and send it to my parents. And then after a couple of months of doing these, somebody on Reddit shared one of them. I think it was called The Danger of Wet Floors, where James is running along through a little garden center and jumps into a puddle. And it was as simple as that. But it got lots and lots of likes on Reddit. And then the original poster, to their credit, let people know where it came from. And suddenly from that Reddit stream, 1 million people flocked over to our YouTube page, and truly it escalated so quickly. My parents were coming into town the next day, and we were also asked if Good Morning America people could show up at the house while we were supposed to be picking them up for the airport. And so it was the weirdest, very, very quick thing to happen. And of course, the sudden exposure from Reddit to news outlets covering what is popular online and on Reddit made the channel more popular. And it's one of those things that is very difficult to predict or try to plan for online success like that, because I was doing what I'd been doing for the last 20 years, just making stupid visual effect shots and putting them out there. And this happened to be the thing that paid off really well.
That one of your son jumping into the puddle is my favorite, I think.
Oh, thank you.
And I actually came across it, before we met. And you best believe it, it was on TikTok. And I was like, I would come up to my husband and I'm like, watch this. I always have to show him TikTok, right? When he's playing a game or something, I'm like interrupting and like, look at this. And he's like, oh, cool, a kid. Whoa, it's always a surprise. It's a twist of expectations. So, again, super congrats. A lot of time working on something that lights up your hearts really can pay off. I think of, for example, people as well, who did the daily renders every day for 13 years and accrued some following in that time until all of a sudden, light switch goes off. And I think that to some degree, it's always the things that are the person's true passion, the thing that lights them up inside, the true like calling, so to speak, of the person. You can't force yourself to do it all the time if you don't like it like that, right?
I think that's really, really true.
Yeah.
And I know that you had mentioned that you started, more down the path that you're on now later in life. And I'm kind of curious, what would you say what would you say is your central passion now among the type of work that you do? Like, what is the have to do it part?
Okay, it's funny that you asked that, because when you mentioned keeping the imagination in your household alive, something struck a chord with me, because ever since I could draw, like ever since I could pick up a pencil, I've been drawing. So I drew every single day between the ages of, as soon as I can remember, 2, 3 years old, to when I was like 20, every day, right? My main passion, like I would even get an itch in my hand. And I need it. I make this pose because like that's the itch, like wanting to pick up a pencil. Literally, like I would feel this force in my hand. I want to draw. I want to create. And my main channeling of energy, I suppose, was creating characters, not just their visual designs, but also their stories. To the point where in high school I wrote entire books worth of notes of all these backstories and cities and religions and political structures for my characters to live in, things like that.
That's wonderful.
I know, but there's a but.
No, but
as I got into the industry more, into the university that I went to, and I got more into 3D, I feel like I lost a lot of that passion fire that led to imagination, and I went more the commercial route, which happens a lot. And we've talked about this, like every single one of the pros that I've brought on have mentioned something along this line, of like losing or either losing or gaining your artist theme, kind of like what drives you, what you bring into the art, be it your own professional or personal art or professional, and I lost that, and I became results driven. Like, I need to get this job or else, I need to do this. In fact, the fact that I became a technical artist professionally instead of a character artist, even that shows that split in the road, so to speak. And I lost that. That's mixed with like, just not have the times that I was bored were the times that I was the most imaginative. Yeah, I don't know if you did this, Hashi, like you're walking around, you're imagining a crazy scenario and you start skipping. That's what I would do. Like I start walking fast because I'm imagining, and I still do that sometimes, but I feel like real life, so to speak, has distracted me from my original passion. And I've been trying to get it back by making art that speaks to me. And to some degree, I'm succeeding, but it feels like a mountain, and I'm just like here still, so I'm working on it.
Yeah, I've found that it's really important, if you do know you have that passion, to be able to share it with the people who are the closest to you in life, your significant other, children, close friends, and things like that. So they really understand that this is a big need of yours, because it's the best way you can be supported by the people who are physically the closest to you. One of the things that I find the most lucky about the job that I have right now is that it really does allow me to bounce around a lot between different types of creative tasks. And in that process, I'm able to sort of dovetail my strong desire to be on the computer doing something, creating some sort of imagery. And sometimes that lines up really nicely with having a traditional job and promoting software and teaching people how to do the same thing, because I love passing on knowledge, possibly because I like talking, and I am a rambler by nature, so I have lots and lots to say about everything. But it's really important, if you have a passion like that, to share with everyone around you that you do have this thing. It can feel embarrassing, and it can feel non-commercial, or it can feel it can be very difficult to be super artistic in the face of capitalism and jobs and getting up every morning. But I think that it's really worth letting everybody know, don't hide it under a bushel. Really let people know what is important to you, so that they can consider that as well when they are giving you assignments and doing things. And also if they are your home support or family, so you can let them know how important that time is to you. And so it doesn't get away.
True.
It can be really difficult, and it can feel very selfish to do. But if it's a necessity to you or an essential part of life, do it.
It's so true. And not to go on a huge tangent, let's go on a short tangent.
Little tangent.
There is an audience out there for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, we can't always find our audience, but now there's the internet, right? You go on Patreon, you'll find tons of people drawing anime characters or making a little indie game or stuff like that with like hundreds or thousands of supporters, So it's actually the best time to be alive, so to speak, when it comes to producing the work you love, and being supported for it. And also, there's free learning, there's online support, doing what Hashi did and putting your work on the internet where it could be found by the right person or people. My first job was the right person that saw a post on Facebook,
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So it's a really important thing. And personally, I love the internet for serving us in our journey. It's the internet is more than just people getting mad at each other on Twitter,
Uh-huh.
Like look past it. It's a well of opportunity for us artists.
It really, really is. It is amazing how much smaller and interconnected the world becomes when you're online, because it's everywhere. Yeah, it's everywhere all at once.
Yeah, literally.
Hard
Speaking of which,
agree,
that movie did well recently.
Such a beautiful movie.
Um,
With visual effects made in After Effects.
No, really? Nice.
So cool. Really good game.
Yeah, I loved that movie. It's different. Everything feels so regurgitated nowadays, so I enjoyed that movie much more because of that.
Mm-hmm. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. What impact has online fame had on your career?
It had a major impact on my career. I believe that, so I was, I had a kid with a second one on the way at the time. I had been at DreamWorks for almost exactly 10 years at the time, and I felt like I was doing the thing that I had trained myself to do. I was getting up every day and going to a studio and doing artistic things for them and getting paid for it, which was great. And still on top of that, as you had sort of mentioned, I had always had, if you have that thing that's just, like in the back of your mind that you really, really want to do, it's very difficult to lose that. And for me, it was apparently this very, childish mixing imagination with real life thing that I'd always really enjoyed doing. And that opportunity presented itself so strongly when I had James around to make cool videos. And because of all that, when ActionMovieKid became successful, at first I thought it was going to be a really cool month where I was popular on Reddit and I was excited for these 15 minutes of fame for this, this industry that I'd been working really hard in for decades. It was neat that my portfolio of sorts of my personal work was getting out there and enjoyable to people. But as I kept this hobby up, it was successful enough that I had to go, make a little separation of DreamWorks work and my YouTube channel and establish in writing with the difference. Because if you're working at a creative studio, when you come up with something, there are lots of, it can be tricky. And so one foot was in this ActionMovieKid world and one was in my DreamWorks animation world. And it seemed so foolish to me to believe that the YouTube one could ever win. but it provided so many opportunities, like getting to direct like 40 commercials for Toys R Us. And because of that, getting an agent to represent me as a director and then present a bunch of other opportunities to me. And it was really fun to have an agency. I felt so silly and stupidly important for having this successful YouTube channel that it provided me with enough opportunities that I eventually said, well, I wouldn't ever quit my job unless it provides all of these things that my job provides, because I'm an adult and I know what you need to survive. Yeah. And remarkably, they laid out the case that it really would. And so the internet fame allowed me to leave my job. And I have worked at home, generally doing projects that I like and get to come up with on my own pretty much ever since. And this was a good, almost 10 years ago now. So it's been really, really nice that the online success allowed me to have my own voice be the primary thing that I was trying to direct at creative projects. Even when I'm working with Red Giant or Maxon, it's really wonderful that that they respect the artist behind that. So yeah, it's exciting.
So between working for yourself only and working for Maxon, like how did that relationship begin that you decided to go back to work full time?
So that was a very long process. Even back when I was working at DreamWorks, I decided that I knew that I had seen a lot of Red Giant tutorials and really loved using trap code products. I used them on the Kung Fu Panda movies, and I got to use them in my work nearly every day there, just because it was the coolest 3D particle system you could have. And so at some point, I just decided to email the Red Giant people because they were very accessible online. And I was like, hey, by the way, I love your products and I use them all the time, blah, blah, blah. And it just so happened that Aaron Rabinowitz, who had done so many of the tutorials I had learned After Effects from, was working at Red Giant at the time and responded to my email within like seconds. Like, I don't even know how he had time to write this, but he was like, I'm going to be in LA next week. I would love to come by and see you. And so starting then, I ended up meeting Aaron the next week or something like that, and stayed in good contact with Aaron. And then when Seth Worley, who's the director who's worked with them to make really incredible short films and also now works with me in Maxon, was moving to LA, and we just sort of all became friends, constantly talking about projects they were doing, projects I was doing. I was still doing the studio job, but I was slowly moving into just the world of YouTube. And once I was in the YouTube world, every now and then I would do something with one of their products. And so I would mention to Aaron, like, hey, if you want to, promote a thing with one of these videos, do that. And probably once a month, Aaron would call and say, like, hey, you should work for us. Like, we could, come work for us. And after about 2 years of that, I eventually decided to take a part-time job working for Red Giant after proposing what I thought would be fun, because it would keep my I knew that I didn't want to do the same thing every day. I wanted it to be something where I could figure out how to chase the next creative itch I have and have a good excuse to do it. And Aaron really created that for me at Red Giant. And I know that he had done the same for Seth Worley, and our paths just sort of kind of kept on heading toward each other, which led to our job now at Maxon, where Seth and I make that But for Raptors series and the VFX and Chill show. And it's the most absurd and wonderful thing that I am so grateful for. The bizarre, it would be so difficult to explain to somebody what we get to do. But it is because of our combined ridiculous histories.
Destiny. Fun, ridiculous, VFX destiny.
Absolutely.
So nice. Do you have any advice for new people trying to make a name for themselves online with their art, whatever it may be?
Harkening back to something we said earlier, there is no right way to do anything. But I think that it is really valuable to share anything you make. Share as often as you can and get comfortable with sharing, accepting feedback, and at the same time, be comfortable asking for help when you need it. It's something that a lot of people are really afraid to do, but no one can succeed in this industry without some kind of advice, whether it's coming from tutorials or from lots and lots of practice on their own or studying from life. But it's a very dedicated thing that you have to do. And I think that it's really worth being vocal in those situations. If you love tutorials, tell the people who make those tutorials that you love them and that you're interested in what they're doing. Share the work that you make with people online, because as we've mentioned, the internet is a really wonderful way that the larger world can feel a lot smaller and your work can travel a lot further as a result. So share what you make early on and try to and just slowly steer yourself toward the things that you enjoy doing the most. Because if you don't know now what is the type of art or the thing that you couldn't live without doing, doing a bunch of stuff and posting stuff online will steer you there pretty quickly, honestly. You'll figure out what you like about it, what you don't like about it, and find that you have this pull towards something or other. And I have no idea what that'll be, but it's really exciting to try. I'm so rambly about this stuff, but honestly, just do stuff, finish stuff, and move on. Share it and move on to the next thing.
I'm going to print this out and put it behind me when I'm having mentorship meetings.
You don't have a big enough wall, my gosh.
Because I say the same thing all the time, right? One thing that I wish all my students and mentees understood is that putting your work on the internet, or anywhere for that matter, is by default naturally a vulnerable thing to do, right? It's vulnerable. It's scary. You don't know who's seeing it. You might get negative feedback. You might get a troll or two. It's part of this process. It's worth it. And you don't have to wait until you're so good that nobody can ignore you. You have to start now. I think back, like I wanted to get into social media when I was like 20 and I couldn't make myself. So I lost out on like more years than I've been doing it, that I could have been. Imagine how much I could be posting and doing and learning and the people I could have met in that time, So be vulnerable. People, as they find you on social media, the growth is slow at the beginning. It's exponential, so it gets faster as it gets faster. But they're going to grow with you. People like a little vulnerable moments or relatable moments or even crappy art. Guys, like, it's fine. Like, take a chance. Put your work out there. I have so many mentees that specifically ask me this one thing. They're like, I'm ready to start freelancing. I put my 5 portfolio pieces on ArtStation. Why is the phone not ringing? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, you actually have to come up with a posting schedule. Like, how are they supposed to find you? That's why all these awesome opportunities are going to the findable people. Visibility matters, right? Doesn't mean they're necessarily better than you. It doesn't mean that at all. They're just easier to find. People are lazy, They're not going to scroll through every single 3D artist Twitter account to find you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being visible is quite important. And there is a big element of spectacle or whatever you'd want to call it that it has to go into what you do. I think that it's really the more and more you post, the more you will find out something surprising might have been the most successful thing that you've posted. And first of all, it's really cool. And what's good to learn from that is that people liked that thing you were doing. If it isn't what you love doing, don't chase that. It's really not worth chasing approval online because I've done plenty of approval chasing, and it is never as genuine as just something that you really enjoyed doing. So use the community to try to learn what is your most passionate thing. And as people see that story and you are findable for that reason, yeah, it'll be a lot better than some really finely honed portfolio that offers very little for people to see compared to your whole creative journey and what you're into, where this person is really good at this type of character or this type of effect shot or this type of thing. So yeah, you can make a name for yourself even if it feels very small.
Hashi, what would you say that sets really successful VFX artists apart from the ones that maybe don't quite make it or seem to struggle in the industry?
I believe that the people that I know who have been successful in the visual effects industry are people like Todd Vaziri or Stu Maschwitz, who really almost couldn't exist without being able to understand and be curious about as many things as possible. If you ever interact with Stu Maschwitz, you will realize that that somehow that man has this immeasurable amount of knowledge about anything you may casually drop in a conversation, and you will be made to feel like the stuttering baby who doesn't know anything about whatever it is about the history of why pens work the way they do or something like that. And what I think, and that is all to say that if you're always curious about how things work, you will continue this process of investigation and thereby creation of different techniques and ways to do things. And so being a problem solver in life really leads to being a good problem solver in a technical skill like visual effects, knowing that you can really force a program like After Effects, which originally wasn't designed to do feature visual effects. Someone like Stu figured out how to force it to do visual effects on Men in Black. And it was because he knew that would be the fastest way to do something that wasn't even considered to be done on a computer like that. But he proposed that it could. And lo and behold, that is the right type of thinking you need in an industry like that. Because if he had questioned, what is the right way to do this, or should we even do something like this? All of the giving into a lot of that kind of doubt instead of barreling ahead is what will can slow you down or can make you think, if there's only one right way to do this, I might become really good at this one thing. But if you're not curious about the other things, then you may not become an all-around visual effects leader when it comes to trying to establish the way to do something or to come up with a new way to represent something. And so successful visual effects artist is a little bit of a weird term because it depends on what you mean. Like, is it someone who can become a supervisor? Is it someone who's really good at communicating their ideas to other people so many other people can work on the same vision or anything like that? But I think, at least to me, the most successful and fascinating people are the curious.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The ones that could teach the others or even write entire books, publications about their findings. Mm-hmm. I know I have a ton of books back here that are by similar people, in different industries that have created their own way of thinking and of doing things that are now teaching us and inspiring us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So be curious. There are a lot of inspirational people out there that do really cool things. There's something to learn from all of them.
That's for certain. Can you talk a little bit about some of the maybe one or two biggest challenges you've had in your career and generally your time as an artist and how you overcame it?
Definitely. One of the first professional challenges I had was when I was working at DreamWorks. As I mentioned, my first job was a production assistant in the story and editorial department. A big studio has to get so many people to do things that standardization is really important and processes are really important and difficult to change, because especially in an animated film or like a video game, you are literally creating everything that is going to be on screen. So you're creating the environments, the worlds, the characters, animating them, making them do what they need, doing testing and stuff. And there's not as much room for experimentations at some levels of that. You hope that the creatives in charge are driving that and that everybody else can sort of work within a pipeline. And as a person whose primary responsibility was doing things like pinning up storyboards and literally at the time they would, with a video camera, film each storyboard for 10 seconds as a piece of footage to put into their Avid software to cut together story reels. And this is in 2005. And so I felt that it was absurd that we weren't using more digital things and scanning things or being able to do more. So I had this frustration of what my job was supposed to be and who I could voice this opinion to, because I was a PA, which was the lowest paid position you could be there. And I really saw an opportunity for what they could be and I thought should be doing with their storyboard system and with their editorial system. And what I really liked, at least what animation provided, was an environment where there weren't lots of super strong egos. And it made it easier for me to speak up in that scenario until I said we should have a digital pipeline. It would save all these things. It would save this kind of time. It would do these things. And in the end, they just sort of said, well, then, like, fine, like, prove it. Like, but the proving it time meant doing the job both ways for a while. And what was great is that I could stay late for a few hours and scanned the entire movie into our computer. And so we suddenly had that and could do digital animatics and could do all these things that we weren't doing at the time. And it was a lot of fun to work with the editors from that perspective because they weren't able to do something new. And inviting people into a problem that you see was really what helped me overcome that challenge of being afraid to speak up and afraid to challenge the way these seasoned people did something. And luckily that kicked off more and more people seeing me as artistic there because, I came out of the gate hoping that I would get to go be a filmmaker or a visual effects artist or whatever it was somewhere, and found myself doing, finding a lot of humility in my new job. And so I think that it was recognizing that, goodness, I am just rambling on this one as well. But being able to voice your ideas to people in a way that is unthreatening was really, really important step of getting out of that rut.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I sometimes have that struggle myself. I can be a little direct sometimes,
It's important to be direct, and it would be important overall for it to be more normalized that people can, that you can say what you think and you can say what you need, or you can say when you're being squeezed, or you can say when something is too much for you or something is not interesting enough for you. Because I think if the more we connect with each other as humans below whatever industry it is, the better that we can serve each other, either at your company or your job or the team that you work on. It's worth sharing all of those opinions and things, because whatever you have to hold on to on top of whatever you're being asked to perform or, output, that's stressful. And I think we should normalize communication. And so it's less frightening for people who come after us.
Super, super words of wisdom. So, are you ready for the rapid fire round?
Oh, sure. Why not? Let's rapid fire.
What's the best advice you ever got?
The best advice I ever got was probably from my dad, who told me that whatever I decided to do in life, to try to become indispensable to somebody. And And I don't mean it in the most like Machiavellian sense, but that thought was in my head a lot through college and through the first days of working at DreamWorks. Was like, my dad was amazing in that, he's always believed that I was talented at what I did. And so he said, like, that's not what, like, telling me how great I am as your dad or whatever wasn't as important as saying, like, make sure that someone knows that you can do something that no one else can, whatever it is. And that's just, him not knowing exactly what it is that I do down to the, detailed level, just says, like, let's keep on doing something that other people don't do. And that's been really inspirational because it's, I feel like I've continued to do that, even if it was subconsciously, is just wanting to do something that stood out in any way, which is, what do we all artists hope to do?
Plus, it helps to make your own job security.
Definitely.
How about the worst advice you ever got?
Oof. I think I don't know if I could pin it to one specific person, but I do think some of the worst advice you can get is from anybody who believes that you can only do something one way. Or if somebody says, like, go ahead and try it that way. That's not the way that we do things. And so it's basically anyone whoever uses the term "the real world" at you, like, again, run. Like, if they say like, but once you get out there in the real world, that's not how it is going to work.
You'll see. And
so, it's not a specific worst piece of advice, but that's one that I like to think of often.
Nice. You've already kind of answered the next one, but what pieces of software do you use on the regular?
Oh, I use so my hub is always Adobe After Effects. I love being in there. I'm comfortable with it, and what I like about it is that the image that you're going to output is right there in front of you. So what I see is what I'm going to put out to the world, and I really enjoy that part of it. I also work a lot with Cinema 4D to do all of the 3D elements that I need to do for something. And working at Maxon now and working really closely with the Maxon training team has been really exceptional because I suddenly have access to people whose knowledge and skills are so far beyond mine that I can use all of that experience to try to bring to life some stupid idea that I have, because I'm really interested in the idea having life somewhere. A trainer will be really interested in teaching me how to do that. And as a combination and as a whole team, there are a lot of really cool things that I think that we can do, which is really fun. So After Effects and Cinema 4D. And between those two, I feel like I can take on the world.
So, what are the most common mistakes or pitfalls that you see aspiring VFX artists make, and how can they avoid them?
Yes. So, I think one mistake that you can make is watching a tutorial and then being completely having no curiosity about what you could learn from the tutorial that is not just the thing it presents. So if your reel is full of a bunch of, in my world, in After Effects or compositing, if your reel is full of a bunch of examples that were on Video Copilot or directly came from some MoGraph lesson that you had somewhere, you'll become very bland in the landscape of your work that is visible. I'm not saying that it's not important to try those things out or to try to mimic what somebody is doing. I think that mimicry is a very important part of the process. But if you're not curious about what could push that further and exploring something even a little bit further, if you stay on paths all your life, you will be on little paths all your life. And so it's really up to you to decide if you do want to forge something new or create something interesting that is unique to you or speaks to your voice, as opposed to just following along. And if it's not a desire to you, that is absolutely fine.
That is fantastic advice, because we do always see when we're hiring those same like 5 or 6 pieces, over and over and over again. So yeah, people need to kind of take what they learned and think of new ways to apply it. I 100% agree. Have you ever felt stuck, and how did you overcome it?
My goodness, I feel stuck on the regular. I do have ADHD, which means that I can be, without leaning on it as a crutch, I can become so intensely focused on one thing that I really want finished that it will become the most important thing in my world. And as soon as I hit a roadblock where something about it becomes uninteresting to me, or I just happen to have a sleep cycle that knocks out that momentum that I had, I can completely drop a project forever, even if it was intensely important to me the day before. And it's been a real challenge. One of the things that has been the most helpful, and I've said it a bunch, is the more people you work with and the more people you know that are aware of what you're interested in working on and stuff, the more you can get some reinforcement from your friends or family about what you're trying to do. And that can be really important. If you don't have friends and family close by that do that, then online has been really nice for me to do that. So sometimes I will share something as an unfinished project online, and it's possible that people's comments about it will make me inspired to try to take it up and finish it again. And sometimes if I'm stuck on a project, it just disappears into a folder and I shall never speak of it again. I have a folder of over 100 ActionMovieKid videos that are filmed. I know what I would want to do with them, but they're not sparking that joy and excitement that I had about the ones that I have completed. And so luckily I have the advantage of when I get stuck on something, I literally move on to something else as quickly as I possibly can.
Ironically, the next question is, how do you finish stuff?
How do I finish stuff? Dang it. It is really difficult. This is a fun one. My entire online making of little visual effect things is that I either absolutely need to finish something and I will release it when it is good enough to, I think, as I've said before on something, I don't remember what, but that I want my work to at least make you like sitting on the toilet to go. So that's if that's the response that I at least need, then your work can be done a lot sooner. If you can realize that letting it go, if the idea was to complete it, just get it out there and get it done. There's no use perfecting something that will be seen on a phone screen in my case. If you're doing something more, fine art or whatever, I understand that it might be very difficult to get through a difficult project. But I finish stuff when I have other people working with me on it for the most part. So I finish Action Movie Kids when I have my wife working with me. I finish VFX and Chill episodes when I have Seth Worley working with me and Michael Zlapsky. But I do need some kind of external pressure to finish something. Otherwise, I'm very, very good at starting lots and lots of things.
I agree. I built a system for myself that has tremendous amounts of external accountability. And that is the only times I finish things and actually post them on ArtStation, which is where I consider it to be like the library of only things that I'm not doing anymore. Whereas I put so much unfinished stuff on social media, it's not even funny. And
it's amazing. It's so worth people seeing that part of the journey. I think that it's important. And I also like the way that you put it out there is very clearly associating that work and whatever stage it's at with you and what you're feeling about it at the time. And that's amazing. I think that is really worth people getting to know the artist alongside the art. And you're exceptional at doing that. I like to hide a lot behind just trying to put out stuff or letting my children do the cuteness for me or something like that. So
totally. Yeah. You touched on something, and I'll turn it into a rapid question, but do you think that being able to act right away on your impulse to create is key?
I absolutely do. Partly, it's my condition to, if I get excited about something, I will have that enthusiasm until I don't. And so I feel that once I have an idea that I want to get done, it'll be really hard to think about anything else if it's the most inspirational thing, even if it's something very, very stupid. But I find that the creative impulse is really worth trying to exercise if you can. And there are a lot of complications that come up with schedules when you are trying to create a logical schedule around creative impulses. It's really, really difficult to predict when you will feel the most productive and when you will feel uninspired. And for me, it's just sheer volume helps me overcome there being many gaps where I'm not doing something. But if I don't get to act on an impulse that I had to make some silly video right then, it often can be lost. And as I've mentioned several times before, it's been really important to me and my family to have been able to put a label on this kind of thinking, because if I'm trying to help raise a family and responsibly work and be a legitimate part of our life, it's really important that everybody can rebalance things if I want to act on that impulse. Otherwise, it is me literally walking around grumpy that I'm not working on something else when I'm sitting around my family, and that's very silly.
Yeah, that's not good at all. I have a bad habit of getting really excited about an idea and then procrastinating to start on it. And by the time I start on it, I've lost the spark, So that's my thing that I'm working on. Or I'll micromanage the project. I'm like, I'm going to start a Pinterest board. And 5 hours have gone by and I'm tired,
That can be, there are so many there's so many things you can do to procrastinate the beginning of a project too, even when you're really excited about it.
Yeah.
Once you've thought of an idea or something like that, I know that it sounds like you used to dive into lots of backstory for a character design or anything like that, but can that happen in your mind when you are between if you decided, we'll use characters for an example, but if you decided you wanted to create a character, what does it usually start with? Is it something visual, or is it the story behind that character or their world, or does it start with visual and then you can flesh out stuff even before you get to actually do anything?
It's a little bit of both. So I think in pictures a lot. And so I'll think of a character, I'll start putting together the visage, so to speak, of it, and the world will come to, and sometimes it's stuff that I don't expect, stuff that doesn't go together, and I'll just roll with it. Because I have this thing, and I've never met somebody else who has it or has noticed that they have it, but my brain looks on the inside, it looks like an AI generating images all the time, but 17 at the same time, and they're like noise. Imagine just noise in your brain all the time, and then there's the main picture that you're actually thinking about, and all this stuff, it leaks in, and it can be super crazy unusual, things that you wouldn't think about, things that I never think about. It's totally random. It has nothing to do with anything. Sometimes I like to try to see if I'm psychic by using these noises. I'm like, okay, I'll tell somebody, think of a color, and I'll try to see which color shows up in the pictures.
Well, amazing.
It's weird. I've never met anybody that does that. I used to think it was normal. Anyway, So it all comes together in a picture, and then I can put words to the picture, and then more pictures come with the words, and so on. That's my process. And then, of course, if I plan on making it for real, I'll go and find reference and more inspiration somewhere like Pinterest, which can be a huge time dilation moment, where next thing you know, you spent hours looking at pictures of something mildly related.
How long can something like that live in your head before you need to put something down on paper for it?
I guess it depends on how close I am to paper. I'm always close to paper, but
good. That's a great tip, is to always be close to your, if possible, be close to your tools of creation.
And if you look at my notebooks, like they're all drawn. Like, look at this one. Like, what is that?
Look at it.
What is that? Who are these? I don't know, but like even like just dumb little drawings, I'll make them, just to see something comes out. So yeah, I'll always try to be near paper so that it comes out, and then it'll just be like a little crappy drawing, but it'll at least become a memory. I'll go through these and I'll be like, oh crap, yeah, I remember that, and it'll spark it again.
Oh, that's cool.
These are all during meetings normally.
That's the best time to think, really.
Right. I'm like, this could have been an email. Let's doodle. The last question is something you touched on, because you're also psychic and you always know which the question is next. How do you balance your career, your art passion, your hobbies, your family, and all of that stuff?
Not well is the best answer to that, honestly. I have found that this year in particular has been one of the best years of being able to, and it's the advice I keep on sharing throughout the thing, being able to communicate what my needs are from this, I hate saying it, from my these artistic needs that I have, and figuring out how to balance those out with family time and with the deadlines at work, etc. I found that that talking more to my wife, my children, people around what I'm interested in doing at work, speaking to my boss or coworkers about things that I hope to accomplish. The more that I've been able to solidify what I'm after doing by sharing my ideas with people around me, the more I'm able to balance all of these things together. And I think it's because there's an easy tendency to not want to share how much work you have when you're dealing with your family, or not be too distracted by something going on with your family when you're trying to do work stuff. And those are just the two large states you can exist in, on top of your creative impulses, which may live completely separately from either. I'm lucky enough that my creative impulses get to touch both my life at work and my life at home. And it's really important to communicate with the humans around you a lot, just so you can find that balance with all of them, because you can either decide that you're all on a team together, or you can be, on your own and probably a little crotchety. And those are the two states that I exist in.
That's absolutely wonderful, because I ask this to every guest, mostly because I have no balance in my life. I'm naturally a workaholic, and lately I've been feeling like that's not the way I should live.
It's really difficult, because I could imagine that, because if you asked me like the answer to like what is the most important thing to be doing right now, it might be all of them, or whatever, like whatever it is. I want to be a great artist with independent work that is getting recognized online. I want to be a great worker for my company and knocking stuff out. And I want to be an awesome dad and husband and all of those things separately. And in the end, there's it's not that they are mutually exclusive, but they do require a great deal of balancing to try to make something like that happen. And so I have not found the perfect balance in life at all, but the more I've communicated, the much more I've felt secure in not letting my life spin horribly out of balance, because I have found it. I have easily let work or doing some creative project be this internal pressure that can build into this resentment and like unfulfilled thing that makes me very terribly unfun to be around. And so I would like to be less of that because it's easy to have an ideal version of what you think you are and be able to face what other people believe that you are too.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Hashi, for taking a little time off of your weekends and coming over here to talk to me and to our audience. Hashi, where can they find you?
You can find me. You can see the Action Movie Kids YouTube channel. Just look up Action Movie Kids on YouTube and you'll find us. You can follow me at Action Movie Dad on Twitter. That's where I love hanging out, even these days. And we also have the same Instagram name, Action Movie Kids. But one of the most direct ways you can get in contact with me is to watch my weekly show with Seth Worley called VFX and Chill. It's on the Red Giant YouTube channel. It also broadcasts live to Maxon and its affiliate channels every Friday at 10. And the show is an improvisational visual effects challenge, and it's really fun to have people come see and interact with it live, because we do the stupidest, most lovely stuff, including creating the Butt with Raptors Twitter account, which is, do yourself a favor and take a few minutes sometime and just enjoy the true artistry at work there.
My favorite was the Christmas raptor, the little Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer raptor. That was cute. I also showed that one to my husband.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks again to our sponsor today, Ringling College of Art and Design's VR department. You can find me at AnnaCarolina_art on every social media platform imaginable. Okay, that's AnnaCarolina_ART. And you can also find me streaming ZBrush and character art content on the Maxon. Actually, I'm not sure if it's... I took a little break, so they changed the name, I think. It used to be the Pixelogic YouTube channel. So if you still search Pixelogic on YouTube, you will find it. It's called ZBrush Live, and it's the official channel.
Amazing.
Nailed it. I'm coming back from my break, I guess. So thank you all so much. And by the way, if you're enjoying this podcast, we have other episodes. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Music. Leave us a like, leave us a comment. Tell us what your favorite part was, else you want to hear, what questions you want me to be asking our guests, who you want to see on the podcast, and share it with your friends and family and people in the VFX and 3D industries, because every bit helps so that we can keep bringing you awesome guests. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, Hashi.
Thank you, Anna.
Bye.